Welcome to the Fabulous at 50 podcast, where we are changing the aging narrative. I'm your host, Joanne Newduck, and I'm thrilled to bring you stories that matter and celebrate your place in the world. As an advocate for lifelong learning, health, and women's empowerment, I believe it's never too late to live the life you've always imagined. Through lively and informative interviews with inspiring guests, we'll explore a wide range of topics relevant to our global sisterhood of vibrant, inquiring women just like you. Join me for today's episode, and let's start changing the aging narrative together. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I have a wonderful guest for you. She is a preschool teacher turned singer-songwriter and someone who believes that it's never too late to bloom. And she has just such an engaging and fascinating story. So welcome, Carolyn Harley.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here with 50 at Fabulous at 50. There you
We
go.
were just making jokes about saying names backwards.
Backwards, yes. There we go.
Well, I'm thrilled for you to be here. And, we really just got to know each other over this last year. I had heard of you before, and through a mutual friend, I'd been to another event and listened to you. And you are such a great storyteller in your music that I was so engaged. And I love that you came and did a live event for the Fab at 50 community within Calgary for those that can attend live and in person.
Right.
And I wanted to delve in today. Today, I wanted to delve into a little bit more about your story, a little bit more about your journey. Let's just start off with the obvious question. How does a preschool teacher turn into a singer-songwriter?
Well, the truth of the matter is I was both for the whole time that I was raising my family and working as a preschool teacher. So even as a child, I know I was a creative soul, and I was writing stories and making up all kinds of fantasy, and then I started writing poetry, and actually right early on, my oldest son was just, I think, 3 or 4 years old when a poem came to me as a song. I was actually scrubbing the floor. It's back in the day. I've been around a while. I don't know why they hadn't invented long-handed scrubbers, but anyways. So I'm on the floor and I start singing, what would you think? A blues song. Right. And
a blues song really
blues song,
just
feeling sorry for myself. So and then after that, another song came to me, and I realized I needed to learn an instrument. So I had been given a guitar, which was stuck in my closet for many years up to that point. And I got it out and I slowly learned, a couple of chords and started putting music to my ideas instead of just straight poetry. And the thing is, for me personally, immediately that I started writing songs, I had this sense that I wanted to share them. And so this was back in Maple Ridge in British Columbia. And just outside was the Alouette, just outside of Maple Ridge was the Alouette Art Center. And I started going to that, and within 6 months of picking up a guitar, and I went and I started singing my songs because I just, in my heart, had a sense that that's what I wanted to do. And the other funny story from that is that I would write an article for the Maple Ridge newspaper about the open mic night and everybody who had performed and what they performed, and myself included in there and what I had performed. And then I submitted it and I got performance royalties.
Oh.
Even it was back in the day when it was called KPAC. It's now called SOCAN, but back then it was called KPAC. And with my first performance royalty check, I bought a secondhand dishwasher. And I thought I had died and gone to heaven because I had a dishwasher, and I bought it with my own money. that I had earned singing. And so that was like right out of the gate. I just had this wonderful sense of sharing my music and the potential for maybe a financial return.
Yeah.
So
So this was when you were still your main income, though. Your livelihood was being
a
uh,
preschool teacher,
preschool teacher. Okay.
preschool teacher.
So share with me then, or share with all of us, what it means to be a late bloomer. Like what shifted for you and when did that shift?
Well, even back in the day, I had the sense that if I kept working on writing and working on my guitar playing, that eventually I would reach a place where I could say that I was, you know, um, I could even call myself professional.
Okay.
And so all through those years of raising my kids and working as a preschool teacher, which I absolutely love, because at
Mhm.
heart I'm kind of a silly person. And preschool, I
I
always
can
said,
vouch for that. I've seen you perform and you're so fun. You're like really engaging.
oh, thank you. But I always said that if a year went by and a child didn't say to me, Mrs. Harley, you're silly, I I would know I needed to quit. So teaching preschool suited me. And the other benefit was I was off in the summer, I was off at Christmas time, I was
Okay.
off at Easter, so I had breathing space to do this
Nice.
other as well as that. So I started to transition later in life from just teaching every year or so I would drop a class. So then
Okay.
I would have more time in my later years to devote to the music, and so that's kind of how I transitioned. And I've been so blessed because I got to spend all those years teaching preschool and loving it, and then
Mhm.
transitioned into performance and learning some skills with guitar and social media and all these late
Oh,
life things
nice. As
that
people
went
call
with
it, a
it.
second act in many
A
ways.
second act.
Like
Okay.
before, it sounds like you were dabbling in it. It was almost like a hobby. It was a little more just
Mhm.
fun and hobby.
Yeah.
And now this is you live and breathe your music, and you've been very successful with that. So why don't we get you to boast a little bit
Okay.
here and to share actually I'll ask a more specific question is do you have a favorite song or album?
A favorite song or album? Um,
I
that's
didn't
actually
warn you what I was
that's
going to be
I
asking.
know, that's a tough question because,
There-
perhaps my Heartbeat of the World, which is the most of the songs I wrote during COVID, I wrote them in my garden, where I was
Mm,
trying to stay connected to something positive. And I worked with a really talented young Calgary musician, Aaron Young, who just
mm.
won. With he and another fellow just won for their blues album. He's a
Oh,
wonderfully
wonderful.
talented fellow, and I met him years ago through my son. My youngest son
Mm.
is a professional musician, and I'll tell you a quick story. I had posted a picture on Facebook of me as a young mom with my two little boys
Go
and I'm
on.
holding a guitar, and I posted it on Facebook and I said, "Who knows what kind of guitar this is?" And this young fellow, Aaron Young, he answered it. And he said, "It's a Stella guitar." And then he said, "I happen to have one for sale." And so it seemed, and it wasn't an outrageous price. I didn't really need a guitar, but it seemed like a circle back to the beginning of my writing because that
Oh,
guitar in the picture was stolen out of my car. And so
oh,
I had lost it, and it felt like this lovely circle back to the beginning of my songwriting. So this was during COVID.
nice.
So
Yeah.
in the summer, he brings the guitar to me, and we meet in the backyard. And I get telling him about these songs that I've been writing during COVID. And he has a home studio, and he's a
Fantastic.
wonderfully talented young fellow. So he did all the work, all the tracks, and I got to just go in and sing. And then I had
Nice.
to, at this late bloomer stage in my life, I learned how to release it through
Mm-hmm.
CD maybe to Spotify, to iMusic, to all those things. And then I submitted it to YYC Music, which is Calgary's music awards, and
Yeah.
it was nominated for Folk Recording of the Year.
Awesome.
So
Hold
that
it
was,
up for those that are
yeah,
watching. You can
there we
watch us
go.
on YouTube. You can
Yeah,
also get us on all the
yeah.
podcast
So
platforms. Oh, what a beautiful cover.
heartbeat of the world, and my friend Heather Brooks designed that for me, and
So
so
nice.
that's probably have a sense of as a late bloomer, accomplishing a lot with that album. I also followed up on a uh, connection that I made through a fellow musician here in Alberta, and I released that album to Europe.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, and one of the
Nice.
songs on here is called "Singing in the Choir," and it's just a funny song, but it's about how we all work together.
Mm-hmm.
We're all on the same page and we're all singing in the choir. And it's quite
Nice.
funny. Like because you might sing high, you might sing low. We need you singing in the choir. So it's like that kind of thing.
Oh,
Anyways,
I haven't
in
heard that one. I'm
Wales,
going to have to check that
in
out.
Wales right now, there's a little choir in Wales singing that song because they heard it over in Europe
Really?
and contacted me and said, may we sing this? And so I always say this is the adventures of a
Yep.
late bloomer because
I
I
love it.
never know when I do something what's going to come of it, and that to me is the rush of it all,
Oh,
fun of it
it's
all.
so fulfilling. What I'm hearing you say is just, yes, this is about like you've come. Ugh, I'm going to back up here because I have so many ideas that want to pour out all at once. What I'm hearing you and what I've heard from some of the other interviews that I have is sort of that first wave of working and our first career or first couple careers sometimes is all about it's our livelihood. And what's kind of cool, and especially that transition when we get into our 50s or so, there tends to be a bit more of a reflection. And that's what I'm hearing from you, a reflection on our life going, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Is this what we want to be doing? So
Mhm.
obviously, it's nice when you can be making money at this next career, but it's not just about making a livelihood. It's about filling you up. Like, did
Right.
you notice that there was a bit of a shift a little later on in your midlife? And what did that feel like for you?
Definitely, definitely. As I mentioned earlier, I started, in my mid 50s and heading for 60 to start dropping a few classes. And I took
Hmm.
my Canada pension early at 60 and dropped a class then. So in my mind, it was, I had this income now, and I would give me more breathing space. And my idea was I wanted to be in a place that anything that came by me, I would have the time and the energy to say
Mm,
yes. I wanted to say yes. And so I would say, 55, 56, I really started looking forward to this time when I would be spending, the bulk of my time on my music.
on the music. Now,
But
I
I
asked you in,
also,
oh,
I'm sorry for interrupting,
no,
but I,
no, that's
I,
okay.
I also am an avid birder. And
Oh,
so I've been
did
doing
I
that
know
for
that
like
about you?
25, 30 years. So I
Wow.
love being out doing that and photography. For my 65th birthday, with my first old age security check, I bought a beautiful camera.
Oh,
And
nice.
yes,
Nice.
then I stole a lens from my husband because it turns out
Borrowed.
I borrowed.
Borrowed.
Well, he
Same
never got
house.
it back. So, anyways,
That's funny.
so I honestly like to fill my time with what I call creative processes, like
Yeah.
gardening, bird watching, photography, working on my music, time with family, and I look really hard to try and find that balance. And
Hmm.
so, even the music, even today in retirement, I still have to work to have that balance. So
Yeah.
that what I want to always have is that sense of joy and enthusiasm
Yeah.
so that I'm not burned out and jaded with my music. So that's
Exactly.
where I am today.
Exactly. You want that to be something that is joyful as
Yes.
opposed to a job,
Hmm.
right? So
Right.
wonderful. And I know I've been able to be at several events where you're singing songs. And forgive me, but I don't remember the name of the song, but you had a couple really, really cool ones at this one event. But one of them was, oh gosh, what was the name of it? You told a really interesting story about it. Oh, something like driving like you drive well for a girl or what? Like
Drive like a
that's
man.
drive like a man. Oh
Drive
yeah,
like
can
a
you
man.
share this story? This is so cool. We everybody there just laughed and laughed. Like it
I
was
know. It
quite
is.
comical.
It's quite funny. Yeah. The story that I was telling was my best summer ever. And so during
Hmm.
this best summer, I got to lifeguard at an officer's pool. I'm a teenager lifeguarding at an officer's pool, and I'm learning to drive. My dad is thinking that I'm going to be a timid driver, but after we go for the first practice run, when we pull back into the driveway, he says, "You drive like a man." And so I wrote this song because over the years, I've never quite figured out whether that was a compliment or whether it was a put down, like saying, like women can't drive or whatever.
It
So
was
anyway,
both. It was both.
it was both. And I love to have that conversation, which happened that night,
Yeah.
where I just said to the audience, "So what do you think he meant by that?" And there was
Yeah.
some interesting feedback from people.
There was some
Um,
interesting feedback, and it
mhm,
really is going back to a time when that was really a thing. There was a real um shall we say prejudice or belief that like women couldn't drive. And so
mhm,
to be for him to he thought he was complimenting you, but it was very much a backhanded compliment. But
yeah,
the actual song is hilarious.
it is funny. It is
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. What album is that one on? Or is
I've
it?
never released it. I just worked it up. I'll tell you, I'll be perfectly honest. Because I've been writing since my early 20s, I probably have 600 songs.
Wow.
And so for different events and whatever, I will go to this. So if you see behind me, I got A to J in one binder and M to whatever.
That's
Like
all
I
songs.
those are all songs, all in
Amazing.
alphabetical order. So I can go to them. And so for that event, I went and pulled that song. But there's no way I've recorded
Fantastic.
like 5 or 600
No, no.
songs.
Well, that one is so much fun. And I do hope that people that are listening that happen to be in the vicinity where they can go and listen to you
Right.
perform. Now, what I'll do is switch us over to what you performed for um, the Fab 50 community because you wrote a couple songs and you performed them, but those songs have gone all the way to our capital. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Right. Well, when I was a preschool teacher, my first school was Nellie McClung Elementary School. And Nellie McClung, it turned out, was one of the famous five.
Hmm.
And so I was in a songwriting group back in the day, and we were doing a project for Calgary's 100-year, I think, anniversary. And we
Hmm.
decided to each take a decade and write a song and do a showcase. And I
Hmm.
said, I'm not sure what decade it is, but I want to learn about Nellie McClung. And so I went to the Calgary uh, University Library and I researched and wrote the first song was the ballad of the famous five, which tells their story. And
Hmm.
then I got connected with the Famous Five Foundation, which was starting like 25 years ago. And I've been working with them ever since and
Hmm.
performing my songs about the Famous Five. So the second one that I wrote is called The Spirit of the Famous Five. So the first one sort of tells the story of their struggle. And the second one is a call to action song. It
Yeah.
says, well, their work is still not finished. The world is still unjust. And when we fear to take a stand, their spirit says we must.
Oh,
And so
love it.
I actually will be singing in the Crystal Ballroom at the Palliser Hotel in October. because it's the 94th anniversary of the winning of the Persons case, which is why the famous five are famous,
And
because
that's what I
they
was going to
fought.
say, because we have listeners literally from all over the world, they may
Yeah,
not know who the famous five are in like a sentence or two. Can you explain that?
right. So back in the early 1900s, legally, women were not considered persons in the eyes of the law. And in the BNA Act, the interpretation just said person only referred to men. That was the understanding at the time. And they went through many layers of government and protocol to try and get it changed to include women. And then on October 18, 1929, they had to go all the way to London, England, to the Privy Council. The decree finally came down that yes, in the BNA Act, the word person does refer to
Refer to
women.
that. And we're talking about Canada here.
And no, we're
Um,
talking about the whole United Empire,
okay.
all the
Oh, the whole
countries.
United Empire
Yeah,
at that time.
yeah.
Okay. So
It
more than
was an
just,
amazing
but the
accomplishment.
famous five, but the famous five were Canadian women.
They were from Alberta.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they signed, the five names went on a petition to initially to the government to ask for the government to consider this important uh,
Here's what
change.
blows me away with the
Yeah.
fact that there are centurions, people that live to 100 years old. Let's just consider this 1929 is less than 100 years ago.
Hmm.
There is there are people alive right now
Hmm.
that were around when by law women weren't considered a person,
Right. I know.
which is
Amazing.
crazy. So I know
Yeah.
we're kind of digressing, but here's what I love about your music is there's always a story or a meaning. Like it might
Hmm.
be something funny or silly or quirky, but it
Yeah.
also can be very meaningful. And this one,
Right.
like, oh, I can feel the emotion already welling up. Do you want
Yeah.
to share about the one that you did to honor just ordinary man, what's going on in Ukraine
Right.
and really could represent any country that is war torn
Right.
that doesn't want to be?
Right. Yes. I'm proud of this project as well. I saw a photograph in our Calgary Herald newspaper, and it was just of an ordinary man in his everyday clothes in Ukraine, and he was learning to throw Molotov cocktails.
Mhm.
And it just struck me that he's just this ordinary fellow, could be my husband, my sons, my brothers, my friends, and one day he was going to work, and the next day he was going to war.
Yeah.
And so they, as a songwriter, I just had this ordinary man idea, and so I wrote the song, and this project, I struggle when you want to talk about learning. This is the cover,
Hmm.
Ordinary Man, Songs of Hope. All the way along this project, it was difficult. My Heartbeat of the World album, it just fell into place. It was
Hmm.
lovely. This one, it was just one glitch after another. It was such a struggle, such a struggle. And but I love the song. And I'll tell you, I'll brag a little. I just did a concert at a folk club, and I did Ordinary Man, and the fellow who's playing on the guitar, Steve Goodchild, he was playing. My husband Joe was on bass, and we did the song. And when I finished the song, there was dead silence in the audience, and then this single voice said, "Wow." And I mean,
Amazing.
you've connected. And then I found out that there was a woman in the audience, and she came up to me and she said that there is a circle of musicians that get together regularly, and somebody in this circle that she goes to was teaching everyone Ordinary Man.
Oh,
And she said, I was just blown away to realize that it was you that had written it. And so
amazing.
again, as a songwriter, to know that your music is touching people's hearts, that choirs want to sing it in Wales, and
Yeah.
people right
Yeah.
here in Calgary that are
Yeah.
are learning it, and because it's touched them. And that one of
Yeah.
my other slogans is writing songs that matter.
Yes.
and and that's sort of at the heart. I want, you know, like you said, even the funny ones to matter
Well, they
in
still connect with
me.
people
Mhm,
because songs are incredible because they elate us, they make us happy, they
mhm.
make us emote and have emotions that we can relate to, or sometimes tap into an emotion that we might have held in, and they give us that safe place to release it. And and I think your music does that. That's what sort of, you would be, I would say, under the genre of folk music. Would you
Yes,
agree? Yeah. And
yes,
so that's why I think different genres of music have different places.
right.
And to me, to be in a room where someone is playing live on guitar and just sharing fun emotions and stories, what I enjoyed about your entertainment was you would do a song, and then you would do a story, and then you would do a song. So it's not just song after song. It's not just the music. It's the
Yeah,
whole storytelling,
right.
which is
Yeah,
magical.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm
But
looking at,
the
oh,
other point I'd like
go
to
ahead.
make is
Oh
that,
yeah.
that there is a folk storytelling aspect to my writing, but I actually write rock and roll, blues, rockabilly, jazz,
Right. Okay.
swing, folk, country, and then children's songs and humor. So I always say that when I get an idea, then I think, what is the style of music that would best suit that? And
Oh, very cool.
so sometimes it comes out as a very straight ahead folk tune or a country tune, or sometimes it's more like jazz and swing. And so I've never been pigeonholed as a folk singer or a country singer. My albums are always got a little bit of bluegrass on there,
A little bit
something,
of everything. All
a little
right.
bit of everything. Yes,
Eclectic.
eclectic. The
Eclectic.
one album that was a real. This is another one. It's called Roots Eclectic. Now that you mention that,
Oh, perfect. There we
I
go.
know. And I did this with an amazing Calgary artist, Tim Williams. And Tim Williams actually went to Memphis and won in Memphis, blues entertainer and blues musician. And
Okay.
he produced that and played on it and got it. It's the only album that I've gone into with a producer where they choose the songs from a selection that I sent, and they
Okay.
chose the musicians. And um, another
Wow.
one of my wonderful adventures,
Yeah.
in music. Yeah. And it's
Beautiful.
got a wild range of styles on it. Yeah.
I love this. And just to reiterate, like basically, even though you've done music and songwriting for many decades, it's really only been in the last 15 to 20 years that you have produced these
Hmm.
albums. And so
Yeah.
this, I want to point that out because I think you're such an inspiration for women. I've always said that women in midlife, and I just say midlife,
Yeah.
so kind of from
Yeah.
mid 40s, in
Yeah.
50s, 60s, we have so much to share with each other and the world, and like
Yeah.
get out there and do it. So
Yeah.
we are coming near the end of our discussion today. And
Alrighty.
I always love to end on asking, what would be three pearls of wisdom that you're interested in sharing?
Oh, good question. Um, well, of course, my It's Never Too Late to Bloom. I don't know if this is backwards or if you can
No,
read it.
well, to me, it looks like the right one. So if you're
Okay, good.
listening, she has a sign behind her left shoulder saying it's never
Yes.
too late to
So
bloom.
a good friend of mine designed that for me. It says it's never too late to bloom. And I think that's one of my true philosophies. And
Beautiful.
I'm continuing with my music, and I have great expectations of singing, into my 80s. That's
Awesome.
I've seen artists and they're in their 80s and they're
Oh,
still
me too.
singing. Yeah, so I mean that's my
Yep.
goal to still be writing and singing into my 80s. And so I guess just believe in yourself, like believe in your core value and whatever it is that you're doing. I'm a creative soul, but most everybody has some creative aspect to themselves, and just to believe in that, and to
Hmm.
believe that the world is interested and wants what you've learned, and that you want to share. And
Beautiful.
also I believe in staying connected with creative people.
Okay.
That's my source. So I would say whatever anybody is involved in, that they want to take forward into their later years. Just surround yourself with people that have a similar interest, a similar passion. And so I've created 3 songwriting groups over the years
Oh,
so that
wonderful.
I would have people that I could meet with, share my songs, get feedback, and be inspired by other people. So I say surround yourself with like-minded folks. And
Well, what better segue? I'll just pay you later than to sort of put a little plug for Fab at 50 community. You know, if you're listening to this podcast, then please join our sisterhood. Join us on, you can interact with us on Facebook if that's the way you like to do things in our group. You can join our Fab Soul Sisterhood and have live, like, so they're live, even though they're remote on Zoom. We get together with weekly meetings. And then for those that live in the Calgary area or visiting, then we also have in person. Now, Carolyn, you also wrote an article. I asked you if you could give me a little bit of a
yeah.
story about yourself. And
Mm.
so you can check out the blog and look up the article that either says Carolyn Harley or It's Never Too Late to Bloom, and take a read, and you can take a deeper dive into Carolyn's backstory, which is wonderful. And I'm so happy that you were here today. Thank you so much
Yes,
for joining
it was
us.
fun.
It was
Yeah.
great. Loved it, and love to have
Right.
you back. And
Okay.
maybe next time round we can have you on, and instead you can play a little bit of music for us and give people a little
Oh, yeah.
sampling.
Well, people can go to my website if they're interested. It's carolynharley.com.
Perfect.
How
And
easy is that?
all of this will be in the show notes as well.
Excellent. Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks a
Awesome.
lot.
Take care, everyone. Stay
Yeah.
fabulous.
Thanks a lot, Joanne.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. But before you leave, I'm curious. What pearl of wisdom are you taking away from today's episode? I do hope it held some inspiration or information for you to live your best life. If you are not yet part of our sisterhood, I invite you to join our community by visiting our website, fabulousat50.com, and you'll receive a free copy of our ebook, Make Mine Fabulous, 21 Ways to Energize Your Life. It is packed with loads of tips and tricks. Plus, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review to let us know what you think. Remember, keep choosing fabulous. It's never too late to live the life you deserve. Catch you on the next episode.